Now this is the best way to write exceptions. And let's have a quick recap to what we did before. In this sample, which was done right, you should have viewed it right before you got into the one we're doing now, is we throw a new exception and then we obviously catch it. What I want to show you is the best way. If you're working for a software house or a company, this is the way you want to do it because it gives you the most flexibility, and usually the more flexible something is or solution, the more complex it is. So what we have here is a program called exception divide by zero. And you notice we have a class here, okay, and we also have a public static void main, but we're doing something a little different. If you look right here, we have another class within this one, and this one is class empty string extends exception. What we're doing is we're creating our own exceptions now, not throwing them, but actually creating them. So let's take a look here. We have a private encapsulated variable that we set a default error message to. And since it is an empty string exception, you must supply a value that's passed in. And we have a constructor. Remember, constructor matches the same name as the class. It doesn't return anything. And we have a second constructor that's overloaded. See, this one takes no parameters, this one does, called empty string exception, and then we can override a message, which means I can then pass in a new message that will overlay this default message. And we created our own toString method where we return the type of exception and the error message. And this class is exactly the same as the other example, other than we have this class up here and this very important keyword here called throws empty exception. This tells any class, helper class, or another piece of code that when you call this method, there's the potential that it can throw the empty string exception, and you must have a try catch for it, and if you don't, the compiler will give you an error. Think of this as kind of like the best of online dating, that you know what you're getting into. You know all the good and the bad of someone, and you can choose if you want to work with that object or not. So in this code, you see this is the method that reverses the contents. We've taken a string and we return a string back. And look what we do here. We say if the string is empty, instead of what we did before where we just threw a runtime exception, we are throwing a new empty string exception, and we're overriding the default message. So we instantiate the empty string exception and we pass this message to this class's constructor, and we take the message in and we override this message. So now they will get this verbiage, and where did we have that? Right here. Please supply a string to reverse its contents. And of course if we throw it, execution stops, it goes out, and the try catch will pick it up. So let's compile this. Let's run it. And you can see it looks very similar to what we got before, but we actually have our own exception now. We're not just throwing a generic kind of a lazy runtime exception, we're actually creating our own. And what I want to show you the real power of this is, if you remember, we create our own exception right here, two constructors, and we tell the code that uses reverse contents that you have to be able to handle this exception. And of course we coded it here. Look what happens if I comment out this code. Thus deactivating the try catch. We should not get a clean compile here. And let me get past this message. Yep, and we got a couple errors, and let's go see what those errors look like. It's saying unreported exception must be caught or declared, must be caught or declared. And the reason we're getting that is we're calling reverse contents. We don't have a try catch, but the compiler's smart enough to know that when you call this method, we potentially could throw this error, and you have to have a try catch. So I'm going to do my job. I'm going to take these off. Oop, not that. Take these comments off. We're going to satisfy the compiler, and we're good to go. And you can see why this is so powerful, because you can create your own exceptions, and you can force anyone who uses your exceptions or your methods to capture or try and catch those exceptions. All right.